Hi, I would like to welcome Nyna Caputi, founder and CEO of the Expat Woman. Nyna, so excited to have you on the Planners on Purpose podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Naomi Tucker. I'm excited to be on this podcast as well. I've known you for a while, and it's always exciting to take it to the next level. So thanks for the opportunity.
Oh yes, this is great, and I'm really excited for our conversation too. I've been saving up all my questions that I've been wanting to ask you about the expat woman, and I'm really excited to hear about you, about your business. So this is definitely going to be a treat for our listeners and a treat for me too. So it's a good thing. Why could you just share a little bit more about yourself and how you came to start the expat women for those that do not know you?
Absolutely. So I have to give a bit of a backstory. I'm an immigrant from India. I moved to the U.S. in 2002, and I was just being an immigrant, not having any network was really hard for me. And when I moved to San Francisco, which is where my husband lives now. It's a long story how I met him and all that. But when I moved to San Francisco and he was gone most of the time because he works in film, I was looking for people to network with connect with. I was trying to find a job, and it was really hard. And I googled networks or support groups for professional immigrant women. There wasn't anything. And then that's where the idea for starting something to help immigrant professional women connect,
Mhm.
learn how to navigate a new country, find a job, start a business came into being. And I didn't start the expat woman till several years later because I got involved in other things. But that that spark and the aha moment came to me maybe a year or two after I had immigrated to the US. And
Okay.
yeah, and I
How?
launched it in 2000, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I launched it in 2013 in November on my birthday. I told my husband, this idea's been brewing for too long. This is my birthday present to myself. I'm going to create and launch the Expat Woman. And I wanted it to be a for-profit business because I had worked in a nonprofit and I saw how hard it was to get funding. And my goal was to provide value, but also make money and make enough money so I didn't have to work a regular, 9 to 5 job or do anything else.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it must have been hard over those few years while you were here before when you had that aha moment to when you actually started the Expat Women. Tell us a little bit about that journey. What made you retain that idea and say, I really want to do it? What was
Sure.
fueling that?
Yeah, so I forgot to mention I came to the US to study film. And
Mhm.
when I was studying film, I was in New York, and everyone there was also an immigrant. I mean, not everyone, but I stayed in a dorm where most of the women were also immigrants. So we kind of moved around the city of New York, figuring things out by together, and
Mhm.
it helped, right? So when I moved to San Francisco, and I was living, with my husband, he was gone most of the time. I just realized how hard it was, and I got a job, and then we made a documentary film together. But I
Mhm.
still realized I didn't have that network. I was starting from zero. Like most people, if you've lived in a country, you have your high school friends, you have your family, you have friends of your family. So I just didn't have that network. So I was really starting from scratch with building that professional network. So that stayed in my mind, and it grew. In fact, I'm glad I didn't start the Expat Woman when I moved to the US because I
Oh,
wouldn't have had the know-how
okay.
by working for other organizations, by making my documentary film, which is like running a business because I had to fundraise, I had to find a team, I had to promote, I had to be the voice for that film. I even starred in the film. So, finding people to interview, all that took a
Mhm.
lot of planning. And then some of the organizations that I worked for also, I did things that were kind of entrepreneurial. Like I would introduce new ideas and ways to raise money or make money. They were all nonprofits. I only worked in the nonprofit field after I moved to the US. So that gave me the courage to, want to start the business. But
Mhm.
it also made me realize how, I can provide value and help other immigrant women, you know, uh, go through this journey of being new to a country and then finding your voice, finding your feet, and finding networks to help you achieve, the American dream or success or whatever you might call it.
Yeah, that I think that's so amazing. I can only relate to it being a mom, right? And sometimes when you have a new baby, you're like, what do I do now? And for me, it really helped to be a part of certain groups, like a mom's group or something. And they became like my friends and helping me through that whole process. So I would assume the expat woman is similar, just having that support for those that are working outside of their home country. Is that correct?
That absolutely, and it kind of expanded into not just immigrant professional women, but
Okay.
any professional woman who felt she wanted to connect with our community. Because again, you can't, if you're all immigrants in a
Hmm.
country, not just the US. I have women in other countries as well who are immigrants. If you're only mixing with other people who are new to the country, you're not going to really get the connections and the
True.
exposure and learn the lay of the land or the culture. You have to mix with the locals. And when I started this in San Francisco, and it was mostly events that I hosted, and
Hmm.
people who are not expats would say, I want to attend your events, are you open to those? And I said yes, because we need to meet with people who live here to understand, so much the
Hmm.
pop culture, the slang, get introductions to their networks, so it has grown into a very diverse group of women. We also have a few men. I always, whenever we have men coming to our events, I always give them a shout out, because I
Oh,
say,
good.
so you weren't scared by the expat word, and you weren't
Hmm.
scared by the woman word. You still had the courage to show up. And it's because they believe in what we're doing. They feel that they can also gain from what we're doing. And also maybe they want to support, sometimes immigrant women would be married to American guys. So the husband would come along with his wife, or they would both be immigrants and she felt, oh, my husband would benefit from this, or the woman would be American and then she would want her husband who's an immigrant or her partner who's an immigrant to come along. So there's been some interesting guests that we've had at our events. Yeah.
That's just amazing, and I feel like for me, I learned something new because I didn't know that it was for even just anyone that wanted to make connections. And I know that I attended one of your networking events, which was really nice. And thank you so much for inviting me to that. And it was just such a nice way to meet and network with women and hear about what they're doing and be able to assist if you could assist them. So I would love to hear more about the events that you conduct at the Expat Women, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so glad, Naomi, that you've been able to attend, and you've also been on one of our panels, right? The
Mhm.
event panel, virtual event panel, which was really cool. So initially, my goal wasn't to host events. It was going to be an online, and in some ways, I wish I'd stayed with the online business, because with the pandemic, I
Oh,
would have
yes.
been like, I would have been so successful, right?
Hmm.
But what happened was, especially living in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is a melting pot of cultures, and people are always moving in, from different countries, different cities.
Hmm.
And that was largely my audience. I needed to meet my audience. I just needed to get people to meet each other, and so I started hosting events. I didn't have a game plan. It kind of happened organically, because I was like, the online wasn't working as like I wanted it to, because it was very slow. I don't have a marketing background, so I didn't really know how to promote it. So it kind of just happened organically, these events. And then they took off because San Francisco was booming when I started events, and everyone wanted to live and work in San Francisco.
Okay.
So, I'd have people from other cities flying in just to attend the event, because maybe it was at Google, or maybe GoPro was hosting it, or maybe one of the panelists was someone that they wanted to hear and connect with. And, or people would be visiting San Francisco and would, from other countries or other cities, and like, I saw your event on Eventbrite, and it really spoke to me, or I wanted to, get to meet someone from that company or see the company. And so I'd have people attend. And because my network is a diverse, my
Hmm.
target audience is professional women, and now of course it's global professional women who want to, who want to stand out, who want to achieve success by, networking, or by building their personal brand and professional brand. And so my events got very diverse, because there were women saying, I'm a woman in tech, or I'm an entrepreneur, or I want to get into crypto. So I would have diverse topics, and every topic there were enough women in my network for the events space, the literal space, not the virtual space, to get filled up, because they'd be interested, or maybe they worked in one industry and they were curious about the other industry, and so they'd come for my event. So it
Yes.
became really diverse. Some topics might not have been as popular as the others. For instance, if it was just like an expat networking event, very
Mhm.
few people would show up. So I realized people are not just interested in meeting; they want to come to my events to learn something. They want to learn a new skill, or be exposed to a new way of thinking,
Mhm.
or new industry, or the industry then, and want to learn more from these thought leaders in the industry. And yeah, so yeah, it was mainly events before the pandemic happened, and all kinds of events. I also did conferences and hackathons, and female founder pitching their startups to female funders, because there were so many women entrepreneurs, especially women of color, immigrant women, minorities, who felt that they were not being heard by investors in the startup world. Whereas at our female founder pitch events, they felt it was a safe, supportive environment, really focus on empowering women and helping them, tell their story of their startup and get input and connections with investors.
Very nice. And are those events still in only the California area, or are they now in different locations?
So now, of course, there's no in-person events because of the pandemic, but
Right.
I did events in India, Bangalore,
Okay.
India. I did
Nice.
an event in Hong Kong. I did an event in Toronto, Canada, and then in New York. So I was
Right.
slowly starting to do events in other cities and countries, but without ever dreaming that that would be short-lived with a pandemic, and that's what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how have things really changed with the pandemic? Do you feel like that, how have they changed for you and for your business? And was networking done differently? And how did that all work? How did you transition in a way?
Yeah, it was, pandemic really, like for many, entrepreneurs and businesses that were doing mostly in-person
Mm-hmm.
stuff or business, it really took me by surprise, and I was not prepared. But so I had to, again, pivot is become an overused word, but that's exactly what most of us did, right? We pivoted. I had a event, it was March, and I do an annual Empowered Women's Conference in March. I was doing it at Yale, and I think San Francisco went into lockdown on March maybe 10th or 11th. My conference was towards the end of March, and and so I had to let everyone know that I'm postponing it. I spoke to Yelp; they were providing me with this beautiful space to host the event, and we said, "Oh, by May it'll be fine, so we'll just postpone it to May." I had a lot of people also cancel because, like, oh, pandemic, we can't come anymore. Even if it's postponed, we are not gonna. So I did lose a lot of sales, but a lot of people stayed on. So I said, okay, I'll do it in May 27th. I'm sure in a month's time we'll be fine. We lock down and then the virus will just, pass on or disappear. But I did do another event because I still wanted to do something in March because it's Women's History Month and International Women's Day. So in 2 or 3 weeks, I whipped up this global summit. And I had speakers from all over the world
Oh,
speak,
nice.
like from South Africa and India and Hong Kong, Australia, like Canada, from different countries. So because I wanted to bring women together virtually. I had done some virtual workshops before, but never a conference or a summit.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had a few weeks to prep, but it did really well. It started at 10 and went on to 4. And we had all these speakers from these different countries. It was all live. And it
That's
was,
great.
yeah, it was all on Zoom. It went off really well. So that
Mm-hmm.
happened. Then I did a virtual hackathon, and then there was no signs of the pandemic letting off. It was still looked like we were going to be in lockdown. So I moved that Empowered conference to a virtual event. We had a fashion show planned for that conference, so we did that fashion show virtually. So I just realized that you can you can be creative with virtual events, or you can be creative with your business. I did lose sales. It has affected my business financially because I was doing an in-person event every week. I had companies sponsoring my events, but the beauty was, by taking a step back, I was able to look at my business holistically and see that I just can't do events. And it also made me realize that I have I have expertise to share, and I need to start not just having other speakers speak. I never used to speak at my events. I was kind of, I talk about helping women with their branding and,
Right.
walking to the spotlight. I was
Mm-hmm.
actually hiding myself. I was, even at events, I would always have someone else MC the event, and don't take photographs of me. I just want to be in the background. And I realized for people to invest in you, and then I say invest not financially, but wanting to be part of the Expat Woman or whatever business you have,
Mm-hmm.
they need to know who you are, and
Mm-hmm.
who's a founder. I didn't even have myself listed on the Expat Woman website. I've just very recently put myself out up there because I was
Well,
like,
I love
so
it.
yeah, I was like, oh, it's all about the business. It's all about the women in my network. It's not about me. But
Mm-hmm.
I've realized the power of personal branding. So in the last year,
Mm-hmm.
what the pandemic pushed me to do was get out of my comfort zone because I hated seeing myself on camera. I hate here. It's gotten better and I don't mind. Hated seeing photographs of myself publicly, my voice, the way I looked on camera. But it pushed me out of my comfort zone and I started putting myself out there and adding value. One of the first things that happened was I started getting invited to be on podcast interviews. Before the pandemic, I hadn't even listened to podcasts. I was just so busy organizing events. So, and I'm so happy to be on your podcast today because it's still continuing. But so that and that, for your listeners, you just have to put yourself out there. It doesn't matter how you look. Don't worry, because I kept waiting for the perfect weight loss. Like when I lose,
Yeah, it never happened. Just
right?
do it, right?
Yeah, when I lose 20 pounds, I look slim. Then
Right.
I'll be on but that there's you just have to, and people will love you for who you are, and if you're authentic and you keep showing up, showing up. Sorry. So that's what came out of the pandemic, like building my personal brand and providing my expertise and sharing value to my network and my network's network.
Absolutely. And you're so right about just the fact that the pandemic has had those learning life lessons, especially with the fact that we have been able to tune into who we really are, what we spent time with ourselves, right? And we're
Right,
able to say, hey, this is what I need to do, or
right.
where I could do better and push ourselves. So that's really great that you've been able to leverage that in a really amazing way. So I can't, I guess, wait to see how, now that we're coming, fingers crossed, out of the pandemic a little bit, how that is going to help with just in-person events and help to spear your business again, right? With some of those in-person events. So that's exciting. Very exciting. So when you, I'm going to get into entrepreneurship a little bit because I know you said you made that decision, you had the aha moment, and you
Right.
actually went and did this on your own. So sometimes some people aren't able to get out there and do it on their own. Was there support that you had, or was there just a particular reason why you felt like I can do this, I can be an entrepreneur, and I can fuel this on my own and out of my passion? Did you have a moment like that? What led you to branch out?
Yeah, I think I did. I think because I made that documentary film where I had to, as I said, I had to raise funding and raise six figures in funding. I
Mm-hmm.
had to create something from scratch and see it to its completion and then market and promote it. I didn't do it the right way again, but I think that gave me the confidence. And also, I think with entrepreneurs, I think if you have to be really passionate about what you're doing, you have to be excited. And it
Mm-hmm.
has to come from a pain that you experience or maybe someone close to you experience. So that that filling that void or gap of providing support to your target audience. So that never went, like I thought that was a great question that you asked me, Naomi,
Mm-hmm.
about like, did that need to support expats or immigrants continue? How did it continue? Because I would
Mm-hmm.
hear, I would keep meeting women who were immigrants who were, suffering in different, different ways. Maybe some of them would even speak because they're embarrassed about their accents or, finding it so hard to find a job. So that I kept, as my network grew larger, I met more and more women. So that passion was that I want to help these women do, so
Mm-hmm.
that didn't die. So that passion, and of course I got the confidence from doing something else and getting
Mm-hmm.
out of my comfort zone by making the film. So my advice to anyone who has an idea, you have to just you know, put it out there, maybe in a very small way. I know it's harder when you have a physical product because,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to put money into it. But I think maybe, maybe social media is so easy. Maybe just create a
Mm-hmm.
Facebook group around an idea that you're excited about. I could have done that initially. I could have created a Facebook group for expats and then focused on that. I kind of just went in and created a website,
Mm-hmm.
may not have been as strategic, but I said, just start building your target audience and seeing what people are really, because sometimes again, the issue with a lot of entrepreneurs, you feel that this is what I want to provide them, but maybe that's not what they need, right? So, see, like I thought my audience in San Francisco, my target audience, expats just wanted to network with each other and kind of navigate the city together and hang out for happy hours. Like my first event was a virtual, not sorry, not virtual, happy hour
Oh,
networking.
networking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and did you hear my story? That my first event, I decided my target audience is expats, and I was so lonely when I moved here and wanted to make friends. But
Mm-hmm.
like other expats must also be wanting to just meet other people and hang out in a bar and drink wine. And so I organized this happy hour in San Francisco at the press club, and I had this. I sent a message to everyone saying that I have a sign, just show up there. No one showed up. I don't even like drinking that much. That day I didn't drink. I was having lemonade. And the bartender kept saying, "Madam, do you want anything else? Is anyone going to show?" No one showed up. And, it was very disappointing for me, but I didn't give up because I was like, I know I have an idea, but maybe my network is not interested in just coming to hang out in a bar. Maybe my network is more interested in professional events. And so I just changed what I was offering them and started doing other kinds of events where it was more related to jobs or starting a business or professional connections. So so that happens sometimes when you start off. But I think if you don't just put yourself out there and start doing something, you'll never know. Because you're never going to be perfect at something, right? It's just like having a child, like having a kid, a baby. There's never a right time, right?
Right.
You just have to go out and do it and then learn through your mistakes. And my oldest is 15. I'm still learning, right? How to
Yes.
be a mother.
Yes. I mean, you said some really important things like just do it, right? So if you have this idea, you have this passion for something, just put it out there. Just create something and
Right,
get that feedback and just tweak it as you go. So I think
right,
that's an amazing story, especially, no one wants to be there at that networking event where no one showed up. But if it
right,
wasn't
right,
for you to go there and realize that that was the missing a missing link, you wouldn't
right.
have, this really awesome following that you do have now. So tell us about your increase to followership and now how many do you have? How many
I have
people are in the
30,
ex?
13K in my network. That's people who subscribe to, the newsletter. So again, as I said, I had no network. Most of my network came through the events I hosted. I was hosting an event a week, and when they signed up, there was a little, message or notification saying you'll be added to my mailing list. I have lost people, because sometimes people just come for one event, but they're not interested in being on the mailing list. Another
Mm-hmm.
mistake I made was I didn't really nurture my mailing list. It kind of happened so organically, like so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really work on like growing that mailing list. It was great to have it, but
Mm-hmm.
that's something I'm taking a step back now and working on nurturing the mailing list, creating different lists for different projects. Like not everyone is interested in hosting events. Everyone signed up. Mostly everyone signed up to attend my events, but not all of them want to host an event. So when I last year, one of the other things I did was I created an online course to teach, because the one I was, when I was taking a step back and like, what am I an expert in? What's my zone of genius? It's hosting events, and now of course it's a pandemic, so hosting virtual events. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to teach other people, but I didn't have a lot of people register for that first course. And again, it comes back to that first time when I had that the
That
networking.
networking.
But in
Mm-hmm.
this case, it wasn't because people are not interested in hosting virtual events. It's just that the existing audience I have is not necessarily interested in hosting events. So I need to build my mailing list for events separate from the Expat Woman network, which is just interested in attending professional events and improving their, what's the word? They're not improving, but climbing up the ladder or being more successful
Right.
or building, valuable networks or becoming thought leaders themselves. So sometimes you might not need to tweak what you're doing, but you might need to identify and find that target audience and bring them into your circle.
Mm-hmm. So, a question for you. I think that that was really great. So, as far as now going into post pandemic, what are you seeing as more of like some trends that you, or what do you feel like you'll tweak about your business moving forward, coming out of the pandemic?
So I think I will stick to mostly virtual events
Mm-hmm.
because I've the beauty of virtual events is you can reach a global audience. So
Mm-hmm.
many and women who are not able to make my events in person because you have kids, childcare is expensive. You have to travel, or
Mm-hmm.
so I've realized virtual events have been breaking barriers. I've also introduced, as I said, I taught an online workshop online course last year. So I will be doing it again. It's called the Digital Event Academy. So I'm going to do it a second time, but I'm working on building my mailing list. I'm looking at introducing other online programs as well. So earlier it was everything was under the Expat Woman, but as I said in the last year, I built my personal brand. So I am going to create a second business, which is me sharing my expertise in my areas of interest. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where, I'll have to create a different audience. Some of my main 13K might feed into that, but
Mm-hmm.
I am creating a separate nynacaputi.com. It's right now a work in progress. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'll be doing like, online training, online courses, workshops, group coaching, all
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff, which I'd not done earlier. And I'm hoping also to write an ebook on one of the areas that I'm very excited about and want to share with other people. So again,
Oh,
the
that's awesome.
pandemic hadn't happened, I don't know if I would have been doing all this. So
I
out of
know.
challenges,
I
yeah,
think
out of
I
challenges
think
come
I
good.
went. I don't know what it was. It must have been. I don't know if it was Clubhouse or anything, but I did the same thing, Nina. I went and got NaomiTucker.com just to make sure, if you wanted to build that up later. I think it's very important for just personal branding.
Right.
As well. So that's awesome that you're doing that. So and to anyone else, go ahead and grab your grab your
Right.
domain
Yeah,
for
before someone
yourself
else takes it.
before.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
You can park it and just pay whatever the minimal fee is till you flesh it out.
Exactly. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on Clubhouse. So Clubhouse was, for those that do not know, it's a new app that was exclusive to iPhone, but now it's open up to Android, and it's an audio only app, and it's been really interesting to hear takeaways with how that app has either helped people in their business, if it's a time sucker or what. But there've been interesting conversations on there in regards to business and in regards to marketing. And I know, Nina, you've hosted events on Clubhouse too, and was in there really testing it. What are your thoughts about the app?
Yeah, initially when I started in January, I was really excited about this audio app. One is you don't have to dress up, you because of Zoom, you still have to dress up at least the top half, so no makeup, no. And what I like about it, especially now where people can create their own clubs, again, it gives people, especially entrepreneurs, that power. Like I can create something very easily with it's even easier than creating a website, right? You can create the Naomi Tucker room or club tomorrow, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Like virtual events is one of my interests. I could create the Nyna Caputi virtual events.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do, or you can join other rooms. You can learn. I have learned so much. Whenever I go for a walk, before I would listen to podcasts. Now, if I find an interesting clubhouse room on a topic I'm interested in, it's
Mm-hmm.
where I'm learning. So you can be working, cleaning your house, folding laundry, or driving, or going for walks, and tap into Clubhouse. You can make connections that you've never made before.
Mm-hmm.
So it just again because you look for areas you're interested in, join those rooms or join those clubs, and then connect with people. So it's been for me. I haven't really hosted too many rooms because when I do it, I want to do it consistently,
Mm-hmm.
and right now I don't have the bandwidth to do it consistently. So I mostly join rooms and listen and connect with people when I think, there would be value to me or to them. But
Yeah.
I think everyone should give it a shot. I have heard though that the LinkedIn and I think Facebook are coming up with audio apps as well uh,
Oh,
for those platforms. So and that's why I'm also waiting, because right now LinkedIn is my go-to social media platform. So I would rather just, if LinkedIn does come out with an audio app, I would rather just put my focus on LinkedIn, because and use their audio app instead of being, all over the place or all over the map. But I still think Clubhouse. I have gotten a lot of content, valuable content, and some connections from Clubhouse, and I have hosted a few rooms. I haven't really used it consistently to say that, oh, it has helped my business, but I've heard from other people who have, host rooms like every day or every
Yes.
week, yeah, who have said that it has resulted in new leads and increased sales and
Hmm.
potential clients. So I know it does work for people who
Hmm.
can put in that time and effort. And again, it doesn't work for everyone. You have to check, quality content and not just selling your product or service. Like if it's all about pushing your product and service, people will leave your room. It has
Yeah.
to be about being authentic and adding value.
Yes, absolutely. And like you mentioned, being able to put that time into it because it does take time, unless you're listening to it as background while you're washing the dishes or whatnot.
Right.
It does definitely take time to be there, be present, and add that value. So, well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that about Clubhouse and the fact that LinkedIn and some of these other platforms are looking at an audio only feature as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that landscape changes as
Right.
some of those things get available. So really fun. Well, I appreciate you being here. I wanted to ask you, because I ask this of a lot of the people on the podcast, if you had one book to recommend, what would it be to our listeners? We have a monthly book club that I run and would love to hear thoughts on your favorite book or one that you would want to recommend.
I love that. I love that you do a monthly book club. So I love books. I devour books. But since we were talking about immigrants and, I a book that I think would be helpful to a lot of people, especially as we move more and more into this global multicultural world, is a book called Perception and Deception
Oh,
by Joseph Lurie. He's actually a friend of mine. I met him through a nonprofit organization that I work for that helped immigrant professionals get uh, jobs in their field, so they're not driving cabs, but actually working in the fields that they were qualified to work in. And he's worked with immigrants for many years, and I think he's even lived in Africa for a while. He's lived in different countries. So his book, in Perception and Deception, is all about communication, multicultural communication, and how things can be misconstrued. If you might say something in the way you think is appropriate, and then it
mhm,
might be taken in the wrong sense, or people
mhm.
don't understand. For instance, like I know one thing he brings up in his book is period. In a lot of British English speaking countries, like even me in India, we speak, we learn the English from the British. Period means the dot at the end. Sorry, in the US, sorry, I'm mixing up. We say full stop. We say full stop
Oh,
instead of
full stop.
period. Yeah,
Mhm.
we don't say period. Period for us in India, many of the English British speaking countries, period means the woman's menstruation cycle.
Oh,
And
yes.
but so for many people, when they come to the US, to have to say period is kind of hard. And for countries where menstruation is never spoken about, it's taboo. It's so
Hmm.
hard to say the word period. So he brings up an interesting example in that book. So I
Mm.
just think it's a book worth reading, because it helps you see things in a new light, and also makes we talk about diversity and inclusion and equity, and I think books like this help you see beyond. Language plays such an important role in communication
Yes.
and causing strife sometimes, and
Mhm.
disagreements, I think. So I would recommend that book to your readers.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think that's really even prevalent just in the space of events and planning events because you have so many global, attendees and speakers, being able to
Right.
know how to, what not and what to say and having kind of the mannerisms around that is
Right. I think
helpful.
so. Yeah. Yeah. Things can be read, not careful. And I think the US is so politically correct when it comes to language. I
Hmm.
think, yeah, when you do events, you have to be really careful with your speakers and guests. I agree.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I want to hear just about how we can get in touch with you, and I know you have something special for our listeners. So, why don't you just share that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, as I said, I love LinkedIn. So I would say, connect with me on LinkedIn. My name, I think, will be in
In the
in the
notes.
show notes. So people, but I really believe strongly in the power of virtual events, especially since this podcast is focused on entrepreneurs. I think
Mhm.
every entrepreneur should you host virtual events, maybe monthly, maybe every week, maybe once in 6 months, but it's a great way for you to build the know, like, and trust factor with your attendees to get new potential clients, interested in what you have to offer. It should not be where you're just pushing your product and service. It, again, all of us have some area of expertise, so it should be about that. And or you can bring in guest speakers, but I think events are very powerful. And I have a downloadable guide, 4 key steps to host wildly successful virtual events. I will share the link with Naomi so she can put it in the show notes. I also have a Facebook group which Naomi is part of. I know it's called Digital Events Dreamers and Doers. And again, I share tips and people support each other on how to host successful virtual events.
Mhm.
So those are my two little goodies to share with the audience. And thank you so much, Naomi, for this opportunity to be on your podcast as your guest. I so appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been lovely having you and just hearing more about the expat women and that it's open to everyone and it's an awesome networking group and I just encourage everyone to go over to the website and check out Nyna and yes, take advantage of everything that she has to offer. So thank you so much and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Likewise, hopefully in person someday. And I look forward to hearing the podcast interview and sharing it with my network too.
Great. Thank you.